Hello and welcome to Raising Those Spirits. I'm Steve,
And I'm Sam.
and this is episode 25. 25% of the way through 100 episodes.
That's a
75
good
more
way.
and we're syndicated.
Yes, let's do it. Let's just do this forever, as is the plan.
I mean, there's always new creepy, spooky stuff out there. Like I
Uh,
sent you a
That's a
picture.
good thing.
I sent you a picture this morning. Over the weekend, I was driving through Connecticut and there was just a haunted house, like a Halloween haunted house in the middle of June. It wasn't suspect at all.
I want you to go there and give a full report. It looked very scary, but I don't think for the right reasons.
It wasn't in a good neighborhood. Like, do you
I liked
remember
the.
where I got married?
I do remember where you got married.
Now, do you remember the neighborhood you had to drive through to get where I got married?
I do.
It was in a part of town that was a worse part of town than that. And then there was
uh,
just a haunted house. So there's always new spooky stuff. Part
the
of
thing
me.
I liked the most.
Go ahead.
The thing I liked the most about that haunted house was just the painted on spooky windows, but it was clearly just a warehouse. It would look like a warehouse in a strip mall or something.
Yeah, it was next to a strip mall. It was a
Right.
warehouse next to a strip mall that was just a haunted house in June. And I was interested, but like not enough to die.
You gotta Yelp it and see what it Yelp says.
Oh, that's a good idea. I can just Google it. We live in the age of information.
Do that right now. We'll cut out this boring part where we're talking about you doing it.
No, no.
Leave it in.
I mean,
Look
who
it up because
knows?
now I want to know.
Nightmare on Wolcott Street, Waterbury, Connecticut. It's a thing. It's a real thing. It's got over 55 rooms.
Wow, that's huge.
It is. Page isn't loading,
That's a
but
bad. That's a bad sign.
it immediately popped up in a Google search. So, you know,
Well, how many stars?
it's got 4.5 pumpkins with 41 reviews out of 5 pumpkins, by the way.
Oh, I think we might have discounted this place way too quickly.
It's June. I've never seen a haunted house that wasn't open in the fall.
Okay, so they're clearly pandering to the us crowd.
I guess. I guess
It's
rent's
like too
cheap.
hot. It's too hot to go to a haunted house in June.
It
I don't want
is
to do like
way too
that
hot.
kind of activity right now. Yeah,
That
I
sounds
would go to
stressful.
I would go to a haunted water park or a haunted mini golf. I would totally do haunted mini golf in June. Like a 55 room indoor haunted house, not appealing.
Yeah,
Too
in the
hot.
summer. So, yeah, that's what I drove by and was like, "Hmm.
Don't go to that. Or let's go in, I'll say September, the end of September.
All right, I'm down."
All right, we'll talk about that. But hey, should I jump into our first segment about
Yes. Yes,
spooky holidays from around the world?
I'm excited. What do we got this week?
It is Guy Jatra from Nepal, the Kathmandu region of Nepal. Is a very interesting festival. This translates to the Cow Festival. In Nepal, the primary religion is Hindu, and the cow is the most sacred animal in the Hindu religion. Like most of the holidays we've covered here, this is a celebration of the deceased. Um, this one is celebrated this year in 2022 as we record this on August 13th. In the Nepalese lunar calendar, it falls in the month of Bhadra, which typically happens on our calendar in August or September, or some combination. So I learned a lot about this on a couple of different websites that I'll let you know about. The Wikipedia page. There's also spotlightnepal.com and officeofholidays.com, and the Rubin Museum or RubinMuseum.org. Just wanted to get my citations out of the way first. Um, so like I was saying, a lot of the holidays, this one is to celebrate lost loved ones. It originates back in the Malla dynasty of Nepal, um, which was between 1201 and 1779 AD. This started with King Paratap Malla. I don't know that I'm pronouncing that correctly. Which was ruler of Nepal in the 1600s. Uh, his son died, and to help his wife, the queen, mourn the loss of the son, he asked every family that had also suffered a loss of a loved family member to come out in a procession, so the queen would see that she wasn't suffering alone. So this became a celebration of those lost loved ones, which eventually um, became the festival as it exists today. It's the cow festival because the cow is the spirit guide of the Hindu religion. So it's believed that the cow guides the dead on their journey through the afterlife, which in the Hindu religion is reincarnation. So they believe in the cycle of death and rebirth. Some of the ways that it's similar to Halloween, I don't know that I would say that it's particularly similar to Halloween, except in the fact that it's about the dead and it's also a costume heavy holiday. So people dress up in costume. A lot of what you'll see in the processions is families who've lost someone are supposed to bring a cow with them on the procession, to guide their dead loved one to the afterlife. But cows are pretty expensive. So another way that people will um, celebrate will be have a child dress up in a cow costume. There's singing, dancing, uh, skits. They do plays. Um, so it's a big. I wouldn't say raucous. I did watch a couple of videos of the festival, and there's just it's a lot of marching. It looks like a big community gathering in the Kathmandu region. Um, for them to celebrate their lost loved ones. Like another way that it's similar to Halloween is that it is coinciding with the harvest. So this one starts at the beginning of the rice season. Just after the monsoon season has ended, that's when rice is planted. So it's also part of bringing about a bountiful rice harvest for the year. So that is Gai Jatra in Nepal.
Okay.
Yeah, beautiful, beautiful outfits that people wear during this one. I did. I looked at a couple of videos up on YouTube. Um, there wasn't a ton, but you could see some of the processions and
Some of the cows.
what they wear. Yeah, yeah. You see, there are not a lot of cows. I think it makes sense that they have kids dress up as cows instead of actually having cows, since cows are so expensive.
Absolutely fair.
So beautiful holiday.
Cool. Okay. And what are you drinking now that you've finished reading that?
Ooh, I actually finished my drink right before we started, and it is the Bad Habit, which I found on the cocktail, or I think it's cocktailbuilder.com. This is a very easy one. It's half a shot of peach schnapps and half a shot of vodka combined in a shot glass. Vodka first. Uh, I get the name. Bad Habit. Very drinkable. It went down quite easily, I think, because of that peach schnapps.
Awesome.
But yourself, Steve, what are you drinking?
So I'm kind of doing a repeat of what I did last week. This time I'm doing a frozen mudslide because that's what I was drinking right before I saw the creepy haunted house, and it's really nice when it's hot out. It was really hot at the party I was at, and a frozen mudslide went down really nice. It is 1 part Kahlua, 1 part Absolute Vodka, 1 part Irish Cream Liqueur, 3 scoops of vanilla ice cream, ice cubes, 1 spiral of chocolate sauce around the inside of the glass, and some chocolate
Hmm.
shavings on top. You pour all of this except for the shavings and the sauce into a blender, give it a thorough blitz, and then you fill it in, put the chocolate shavings on top, and that is a frozen mudslide, and it is very refreshing in this heat.
Oh
It
yeah.
is not a
No.
Ron Burgundy thing. Milk is a good choice.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Delicious. You
Yeah,
can't go wrong with a drink that's basically a milkshake.
exactly. It's just a good, wholesome summer thing to do.
Delightful.
So yeah, that is the drink I have had. I'm happy with it. And now I was trying to find a more on theme cocktail, but and there was some really cool like nightmare themed
Hmm.
cocktails, but I didn't have anything that went into any of them.
Steve, I think I did the exact same thing that you did. A lot of them needed gin, which I just don't have in my house right now, which is funny because a gin and tonic is probably my favorite drink, like my go-to cocktail.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, so I did the same thing. I also looked up a lot of drinks with the moon theme, because I liked one of the moon stories in this book. Um, but no, I couldn't find a particularly good the on theme cocktail, and so I went with the bad habit. I found it. I was like, oh, I have both those things in the house, and I just did a shot after dinner.
That is kind of what happened with me as well. I tried to do some short story themed ones. I really liked the one about the babysitter, and I looked that one up. And there's no really good babysitter cocktails. So, you know,
That's a surprise.
I
That's a
just,
surprise.
yeah, there's just like such specialized like cherry brandies and stuff that you needed for a lot of these that I didn't have in my capacity. So, all right, so this week we returned to Bruce Coville, who
Hmm.
famously did My Teacher is an Alien, which was one of our first episodes, I think.
Yeah, it was very early on.
And I have mentioned this book so many times
Hmm.
throughout the thing. We even covered one of the short stories in this collection is The Fat Man, which I did last summer as, my required reading, the things that just kind of lived rent free in our minds from when we were from when we were children. Um, and yeah, it's a good collection of short stories. Bruce Coville only does one story in all of these books. There's the Book of Monsters, Aliens, Ghosts, etc. He's got a whole bunch of them. He always writes the first story though. I liked the introduction to this. I don't know if you read the introduction,
I did read the introduction. I like the Don't read this book.
like the
That was pretty
idea
cute.
of why we like to be scared as a people. It was just good. I liked the intro, and then a cool note about this book is that they they had at the end of the last book a contest
Hmm.
to people. They wanted readers to send in their short, scary stories, and they would pick one for this book, and they did. And I just thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah, I really appreciated that. Something to get the readers more involved. It's also a good way, for books like this that are aimed at young readers, to do anything to also get them interested in writing, like the prospect of getting one of their stories into the next book. I think that's it's always a really cool move.
I agree.
Appreciate that.
Cool. So the first story, if we're just gonna, you know,
Hmm.
jump right into it, if you,
Oh, let's jump into it.
all right. First story was There's Something Under the Bed, which I believe I've mentioned several times throughout this. It is A story about a kid who believes there is something wrong under his bed, but his parents don't believe him. They've sent him to therapy, they've sent him to specialists, and at this point it looks like he's on the verge of just being actively sent away to like an asylum or something, which is almost preferable because he thinks there's something under his bed. And I I don't know what it was about this story, but it stuck with me forever.
Mhm.
And
Yeah, it's a creepy story. It was surprisingly creepy for something that's aimed at, again, young readers, but I guess not too young. This
what
in the tween category.
what I didn't realize is I remembered there being so eventually he gets pulled under the bed right in front of his parents, kind of like proving that yes, there was something coming for him. But I remember there only being like a page or two after that. And that was only like halfway through this story, which did not stick with me up to this point. So that was kind of cool to get back to. But that's honestly like what I remembered was the first half, but I feel like the second half was harsher.
Yeah, you know what this reminded me an awful lot of?
Little
Little
Monsters.
Monsters.
We actually,
Little Monsters.
one of the times we talked about this was Little Monsters. I was like, this is very similar to this book that scarred me. And the entire time I was reading it, I was like, yeah, this has huge Little Monsters vibes.
What year did this book come out? Should know this.
After Little Monsters.
Oh, okay.
Wait, I have it in my hand. There's probably a copyright. This
Probably.
book came out in 1995. That's what I thought. So,
Oh, okay. So
way
several years
after.
after Little Monsters.
Yeah, they were not near each other.
Would you say that this story, which again, if you haven't read it, it goes the same sort of way. He gets pulled under the bed. He gets into this sort of nightmare world. Surprise, surprise. That's the title of the book. Um, and he ends up working for the nightmare creatures, pretty much exactly like how children are recruited into the world of little monsters.
Except they aren't tricked. It's once you're there, you're there.
Yeah, that's true. They're pulled. This kid was Harold. Was that his name? What's his
Yes?
name? Was
Again,
Harold.
I've got the book in my hand. I could easily check this out.
I have a digital copy that I'm flipping through, but it's hard to flip from page to page.
These books were harder to find, yes, it's Harold, than I thought they would be. I will say. I thought these would be really easy to get, and I actually had to like do some searching.
Are they not in? They're out of print now.
They are out of print, which, with how big they were at the time, I just find shocking, especially since Bruce Coville is still getting a lot of his other stuff reprinted. Like, My Teacher's an Alien has new stuff.
If it was too scary, I'd
You got the
want to
Scary
bring it
Stories
back.
treatment. But yeah, so this one, I think this story held up over the years. It doesn't haunt me. It wasn't quite as good as when I read it as a kid, but I was like, this is still a solid story. There is a good horror element to this.
Yeah, it was scary. It was a little scarier than I expected.
It was a good
For
start.
this first story at the gate. Yeah, I agree. It sets the tone since it is the Book of Nightmares and everything really does. There's a lot of stories in this that really do have a sort of ethereal sort of theme to them. They seem more weird fiction. Some of them are more weird fiction than I would say horror.
There were
Still
some weird
definitely
ones.
horrific, but they're like, yeah, like the Fat Man, which we'll revisit in a little bit. Like definitely that was, as much as it was this weird horror, it was so surreal that it felt like a nightmare. It was a
Yes.
good so yes, good
I'm
title
glad
there.
to hear that you've read it because I think that is something very similar to what I said when I reviewed it last year. So it's really cool to hear
Mm.
that coming back.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I agree.
Okay, so the next story was Through the Mirror. which I actually made a short film like that my senior year of college. And I didn't remember this story at all, but I wonder if it was like always bouncing around in my head.
Hmm.
Because I made that short film because the concept had been bouncing around in my head forever, and I wonder if this is what kind of sparked that.
So this is one of the a girl is look. Yeah, this is I feel like this is an old story or an old trope, maybe an
Yeah.
old theme, because this is one of the ones where a girl is peering into her mirror only to discover that the mirror is peering back at her,
I mean,
sort of
there
story.
there was even a Goosebumps about this.
Hmm. So I wouldn't say that that idea is not unique
I mean,
to this short
this
story.
specific short story concept was very close to what I made. It's not just like
Hmm.
someone in the mirror.
That's true. Yeah, this is a short one. This is one of the shortest. This is probably the shortest one in the whole book, huh? This is like 3 pages, 2 pages actually.
Yeah, this was a short one.
Yeah. But effective. I call it effective. No, it was a quick, spooky read.
Yeah, I liked it. It was good, it was quick, it was to the point, and I could see as a kid being like, whoa. Like, as an adult, it's not groundbreaking, but I feel like it would be as a kid. Because as a kid, you
Especially,
kind of like take
yeah,
your reflection serious, like, for granted.
your reflection is a weird. It's a weird thing. There's a reason mirrors show up so often in fairy tales and in horror, because a reflection is such a strange thing when you think about it. It's you, but it's not you. It's you, but it's always backwards. One of the things, something I read somewhere, you know how you always feel like you look weird in pictures?
Yeah, it's because you're not
You're
mirror
not
imaged.
being, you're not being mirror imaged. You're so used to seeing yourself backwards that it becomes strange to see yourself forwards.
Yeah.
I think um,
You
yeah,
see you how
reflection,
other people see you, not how the reflection sees you.
yeah. So reflection's just all around a very strange thing. Okay story, a good story. Not I would call this middle of the pack for the
Yeah,
rest for the book as a whole.
for the book as a whole, it was a good story, but it was very middle of the pack. Which is good.
Yeah,
Like, if something that is a solid story is middle of the pack, I mean, that's a good sign of a book.
I agree.
The next one was Boy Who Cried Dragon, where the basic gist of it is there's a kid who likes to break into neighborhood houses and to steal trinkets just to prove that he was there as like a memento.
Sure.
And one of the houses that he breaks into is actually the lair of a dragon.
Ooh.
And he gets basically trapped in this dragon's lair and magic, and he has to get out. And it very much seemed like a standard Are You Afraid of the Dark episode if it was like 7 pages long.
Yeah.
I
This
don't
one
say
was
that
not one of
as a
my
bad
favorite
thing,
ones.
by the way.
It was
Like, saying it's
okay.
a standard Are You Afraid of the Dark isn't a negative. But, it wasn't my favorite. This was in my bottom half of my episodes, but I still thought it was I wasn't like, oh, thank God it's over.
Yeah. I don't know. When I think of horror and scare, I just don't go to dragon. I don't know. It was. And this is not the only like fantasy story in this book. There are other ones that we'll get to later. But this one, I don't know. This one didn't really stick with me. It's an okay one. Um, Dragons I don't think of as being particularly scary. I don't know why. Or maybe it's because I just don't think like creature feature works particularly well in the written on in words. Creature features are scarier when you can see them. It's scarier if it's a movie or something. But
And
the book the short story didn't really do it for me.
and like if it's going to be a creature feature that you can't see, it's got to be something alien, something like almost Lovecraftian where you like the nightmare is almost in the reader's inability to describe it to you. If it's just a dragon, you know what a dragon is.
Yeah. It's just like, oh, he goes into this house. It turns out the house is much larger on the inside, and keep dwelling within it is a dragon.
Yeah.
Like, oh, I don't know. It didn't strike the chord for me.
No, I
I'd say
agree.
about that one.
It was definitely possibly my least favorite of the book. It's
Mhm.
definitely down there. Again, for a kid, it's a nice introduction to like that genre of horror, but
Surreal,
surreal and like
unexpected.
having to escape someplace. Um, like you're trapped in a house with a killer type of a thing almost, but there's a better one of that later. So
Yes.
the next one was called Drawing the Moon. That was a weird one.
This is
Full Venture Brothers, that was a weird one, Grand Inquisitor style.
yeah. The drawing of the moon, I think, is the one that this might be my favorite one from this. Now maybe Fat Man. Fat Man is very good. But drawing the moon, I think, is one of my favorite. It's one of my favorite ones from this collection. It's so strange and it's so surreal. Like this very much hits the idea of a nightmare because it doesn't make logical sense, but it still makes for a good read.
Yeah, it's almost
Um,
like a weird, endless cycle.
yeah. So this one, if you haven't read this, it is about a boy named Andrew whose parents are dead, but he's convinced that they are not dead. They have been stolen away by the moon. So he has to get to the moon. Again, not like in a rocket ship. It's a more of an ethereal thing to get his parents back. And it's just so dreamlike. Absolutely dreamlike. The logic doesn't, there is no actual logic to it that makes sense in the real world. It is all very much dream logic.
Yes, it's child logic and dream logic, and I think ethereal is like the best word to describe it. Yeah, I liked this one. I wasn't sure about it for like the first half of it. I was definitely like, okay, where are we going with this? But I thought it had a really good payoff.
It reminds me of like a Joe Hill graphic novel. If you're familiar with Joe Hill, he did the Lock and Key series.
Mm-hmm.
This felt very connected, I would say, to the Lock and Key, like to Lock and Key for me, which is a compliment.
Okay. So, and again, it does have a cool ending where it's just like,
Mhm.
oh, like this is almost like a wash, rinse, repeat. Like we'll come back to this story soon, which was cool.
Yeah,
So,
I would watch a episode of an anthology horror TV show that was this story. I think it could make a 45-minute TV, like a short film or TV show episode. I
oh
think would
yeah,
fit really well.
I think that could. I think animation could make that really work.
Mhm.
So the next story is called "The Cat Came Back," which I thought was just a solid, scary story.
Mhm.
Like
This is
this,
like baby's first pet cemetery. To describe
yes.
it as.
Like if this had been in Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark Volume 4, I would have
Hmm.
accepted it. You know what I mean?
Mhm. Yeah, it's a simple one. This one has to do with a dead cat. Um, seems to be the victim of a neighborhood dog. Cat is buried, and wouldn't you know that cat still gets its revenge on that dog from beyond the grave. I'm not doing it justice. It's a it's really, a solid kids horror story. And very, like I said, reminiscent, I would say, of Pet Cemetery. If you're a Stephen
Yes.
King fan.
It yeah, it was cool. It kind of has like an old colonial feel to it to a degree.
Hmm,
Like
sure.
just that type of, vengeance aspect that you get in a lot of the old cautionary type of tales.
I would say this book is illustrated. To an extent, I don't think every story gets a illustration, but the illustration for this story, which is from the cat's perspective within the grave, looking up at the people bearing it. This is my favorite illustration from the book. Um,
I do not remember this illustration, but I do have the book in my hand. ones?
Is on page 73.
Oh, yeah, no, I remember this one.
To put that on Instagram.
I actually did not notice that the tree behind them looked like a cat.
Yeah, that's a really cool drawing.
That is. It's a good POV. Really leaves a lot up to your imagination, which is cool.
After that, we get to your favorite.
My favorite. Actually, it ended up not being my. Wait, no, the next one is the hand. I thought. No.
Oh, the next one's the Fat Man in
Oh,
my
the Fat
version.
Man. Okay, I must have just skipped it because I know all about the fat. Oh, there it is. No, it's on my list. Um, yeah, no, the Fat Man definitely lived rent free in my head in a way that greatly surpassed There's Something Under the Bed, just because it was so surreal. I always felt like I couldn't be remembering it properly.
Hmm.
And the only thing that I didn't remember properly is that I thought the chase at the end went longer.
Hmm. So this is like we said, this is one we talked about in a previous episode, but it is just the strangest story about a group of kids. I don't think we know how old they are. They sneak into the Fat Man's house. The Fat Man is the local recluse, who is a very overweight fellow, um, who seemingly never comes out of his house, and his house is just filled with garbage. And they sneak in, and he attacks them, and he ends up being this otherworldly monster with a talking stomach and a talking tattoo. I was never sure if I was quite understanding what they were
It was
describing
another
there.
mouth on his stomach. It looked like a tattoo of a moon, but then it opened up into a gaping maw.
So that's how it worked.
Yeah,
Okay.
because he was shoving the pizza against the tattoo and it was disappearing, but it was literally just getting devoured through that mouth, and that's the mouth that eats him at the end.
And on top of that, like some of the other stuff that happens in this story, like they describe the Fat Man as swimming through the piles of garbage. And I don't know how you pictured this, but I pictured this very much like Scrooge McDuck swimming through the
Yes,
cash.
always.
Like that's how yeah, that is how it seems to be described. I don't know that there's another way you could take it. And again, like that gets very much into the sort of nightmare nature of this story. Like it doesn't just feel like a horror story. It feels like a horror story that defies understandable logic, which is why I
Yes.
think this one is such a this one really, kicks. This one really holds it. And beyond that, like there's the added twist. So it's not enough that the twist is this man is some sort of otherworldly creature. He's also revealed to have been turning the local townspeople into puppets. He's like stealing their bodies and turning them into like puppets under his control. And that's why several local townspeople have recently become big grumps. And that's again just like a strange thing. Our characters end up on his homeworld when they go through the wrong door. It is a logic defying story, and I think it
It's worth a read.
worth a read. It really elevates the rest. I would say it elevates this collection um above what you might have expected
Yeah,
from picking up a kid's horror anthology.
I really do want to track down Joseph R. Lansdale and see if he's done any other horror. Like that's something I should have done by now and haven't, but like just the way he writes this, I'm really interested to see what else like he's got.
Well, I'm looking it up right now.
Oh, he's done a lot. That's the thing. I've done like a cursory bibliography from him, but I'm gonna really have to sift through it.
All right, that'll make a future episode.
Yeah. The
Again,
next.
added another very strange illustration for this one on page
Oh,
89.
I didn't see the illustration because I skipped this one because I've already read it. Oh yeah, no, I did see this illustration while I was flipping through. It is a weird one. I honestly, This is one of those cases where I actually preferred my imagination.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Oh, it's had a lot of time to fester in my head.
Oh, that's true. You've been thinking about this for like 30 years.
I've been thinking about this since the fifth grade. Yes.
Oh, we old.
Yeah. Yeah. I read this when it came out in 1995 and have been thinking about it ever since.
All right.
So,
Moving
it,
moving on to The Hand.
The Hand, I enjoyed The Hand. It's like an anti scary stories to tell in the dark resolution.
Okay.
Well,
Why would you describe it that way?
because usually when this happens to a character, so in this one, this kid moves from the city to the country, and they're living in the house across the street from the cemetery that the old man in the town recently died in, and he's apparently living in the bedroom where the guy died and his hand got chopped off. And
Hmm.
so he's being haunted by the guy's hand. And finally he figures out the hand wants something, and it shows him where to like dig. And so he spends time digging through hay and he finds the guy's wedding ring, puts it back on his hand, and then the hand kind of like fades and leaves him alone. And he gets over like his fear of the cemetery and everything. But typically at that point, in like scary stories to tell in the dark, the hand would have just like killed him, or the body would have come looking for the hand out of the cemetery or something. You know what I mean? And
Hmm.
done like the thump thump, thump thump up the stairs type of a story because he had its ring. Um, I don't know. I
Yeah,
just
I
the fact that he had a good resolution where he overcame his fears is just such a flip from what we've been reading with the scary stories books.
hmm.
I liked it. It was a good story. I'm just like, oh man, this is like just the anti-scary stories to tell in the dark because it's scary, but it has that good TV resolution when you're making something for
Yeah.
kids.
No, it felt like this would have been expanded into a not particularly memorable episode of Are You Afraid of the Dark?
Yes, that is one of my notes as well.
Oh, we're very similar.
I mean, it's good. It's a good read on the story. I think we're very similar, but we've watched all of the source material that from the 90s that were kind of
True.
all being pulled. And it's true, this would have been a very non-memorable, not very scary episode. The next one was called Tool Call.
Oh, this is the actual shortest one in the book.
Yes, I was like, I don't even remember this one, but I have notes about it, so I definitely read it. But it is literally a paragraph long, and I do remember it because I was thinking about it literally earlier today. So the gist of the story is someone gets a random phone call, and a young man's voice says, "May I have 10 minutes of your time?" And they say, "Sure." And they say, "Thank you." And they hang up. And the person feels just a little bit older.
Oh yeah. This one short, effective.
Yeah,
I mean, it's like a tweet. It's a tweet length short story.
I got a spam email from a politician today asking for a minute of my time, and I was like, "Nope, know how that works now.
It's like you're tricking me, you vampire.
You can't steal a minute of my time, vampire. That adds up." But this actually felt, I don't know if you're a fan of him, he's one of my favorite authors. This felt very Richard Matheson-esque.
Oh, I don't know his work.
Oh, I mean, here's the thing. You definitely know his work.
Oh, okay.
Um, you
I
just
believe you.
he wrote most of the famous Twilight Zone back in the day. He
Oh, okay.
he wrote There's Something on the Wing. You know what I mean? He wrote that movie The Box that Naomi Watts was in.
Oh, okay.
He wrote What Dreams May Come. He has written he wrote The Incredible Shrinking Man. He is one of like the fathers of horror. Like he is where Stephen King pulls most of his inspiration from. Um, he wrote Stir of Echoes.
Okay.
Yeah, Somewhere in Time. I Am Legend is Richard Matheson. Hell House is Richard Matheson.
Okay. So I've actually seen a lot of Richard Matheson
Yes,
then.
Richard Matheson is really good. He wrote just so much. He did a lot of with Roger Corman.
Hmm.
Back in the day, doing like the House of Usher films, the Pendulum and stuff. And again, he did so much Twilight Zone. But yeah, it's he's really good. I love him. I have a lot of his stuff. And
This
this just
reminds you of his
this
work.
is very much because he has several books of short stories, and this is exactly the type of thing that would have been in one of his books of short stories. I mean, it actually reminds me a lot of The Box. I don't know how they made it into a feature film, but it was like a 5-page short story, and similar tone and feel, basically. So I really enjoyed that. It was kind of like almost a nod to the type of story he used to tell.
Okay.
And then after that was a weird one because it's called Master of the Hunt. And
I
now the preface to Master of the Hunt, because there's a preface to everything, says that this is the third time in this series that this author has written a story about King Arthur, and I don't understand how that's possible. Well, I guess it because he's this is the fourth book. He's had Book of Monsters, Book of Aliens, and Book of Ghosts. So I guess he could have had a story in Book of Ghosts and Book of Monsters with King Arthur. But it's just weird.
probably not aliens.
Yeah, it's just weird to suddenly like end up in King Arthur time after all of this stuff.
This is the story that I think doesn't fit.
Yes, one story, and I actually ended up liking this. I was really, really anti it for the first half of it, but I ended up liking it, but it did not fit thematically with the rest of the book. I feel like this was the weakest link on just being on theme.
Yeah.
This would have been better in like Book of Ghosts almost.
Okay. Yeah, that seems fair.
So it's
I just felt
about.
like I was
Go ahead.
because it was the third of these Merlin stories. I felt like I was definitely coming in at the wrong point.
Yes, because I don't
Doesn't
remember King
it doesn't
Arthur
feel like a
having
short story.
older brother. It just feels
No.
like they took a chapter out of another book and dropped it in this book.
Yeah, it reads a little bit like a fairy tale. Um, there's
Yeah.
definitely horror elements to it, but it's more fantasy.
Yeah, it focuses on the wild hunt, which is folklore for a bunch of Northern European cultures,
Yeah,
but
old Germanic.
this is based off of the Welsh version of it.
Hmm.
Um, and I can never pronounce anything Welsh, but it's Gwyn ap Nub. Nud is the person leading the wild hunt in this one. He's it's just Samhain, ghosts are coming up, the wild hunt is happening, and they basically take some invisibility powder, not realizing that it doesn't make you invisible, it drops you into the spirit world, and they get trapped in the wild hunt, and they've got to get away. And it wasn't a bad, like, fantasy story, it just was weird here.
Yeah, it drops to the bottom of my rankings for this book just by virtue of not fitting.
Yes.
It
It
wasn't. Yeah, I kind of just skimmed it over. I was like, this is not what I wanted.
it's a cool
This is
introduction for kids into that like Welsh type of
Welsh folklore.
folklore because like the Welsh, the Gaelic, the Celtic, always like pretty cool stuff like this. So if you like this, it's a really good door opener to a whole world. of that type of stuff. Like the Black Cauldron series, I'm pretty sure is based on Welsh mythology. There's a few different popular like kids fantasy slash horror series based in like Welsh style horror. Um, so it's a really good door opener, I guess, but it just didn't feel on theme. But I do think if a kid did like this, it would be good and that it would really lead them to a lot of other stuff if they had like Google at their hands. I didn't when this came out. I learned about the Wild Hunt
Mm.
again many years later, but it does seem like something I would have Googled and found out about if I was younger. That's the positive thing I'll say about it. I'm like, I don't think it belongs here. I do think it has a place in a compilation somewhere.
Yeah. Yeah, I'd be happy to see it somewhere else. I didn't like it here.
Yes, same. So the next story is called Give a Puppet a Hand. And I liked this one. I kept waiting for the cringe shoe to drop. You know what I mean? I kept waiting because I always hate these episodes of shows. Um,
Puppet episode?
that's just like the cringy puppet. It's not me, it's the puppet. The puppet's being really rude. And it's always just like I don't like cringeworthy stuff typically. And this walked that tightrope very well. It focused more on the horror of it than it does on like the wisecracks.
Hmm.
So in this one, we've got a sad sack kid with a sad sack life.
As you do. In a lot of these puppet stories.
Yes, and one day, after a particularly bad day at school, he's walking home, and an old man pops up over a trash can with like a hand puppet, and they start talking back and forth. And the kid's just like, "Oh, give him to me." And the old man gladly hands over the puppet and then runs off. And the puppet affixes itself to his hand painfully, and he can't get it off. And he's got this sentient puppet attached to his arm,
You do.
like you do. And now he's got to navigate life in school with this snarky, angry puppet. And
Somewhere in there's a metaphor for
yes,
puberty.
it's weird that he gives his teacher puberty at the end.
I am so I'm over creepy puppets. I don't know. Creepy puppets, creepy dolls.
It's
I'm
weird to
not.
say we're over something like that. Like this book came out in 1995. It was still relatively not beaten to death back then, but I agree with you. I'm like, sorry, you you go and exist in 1995 where you're still fresh.
Yeah, even if I would even
And
if it was still like not overdone in 1995, I bet you but even back in 95 there was probably had
oh,
already
there
been
was
too much creepy
tons.
puppets.
There was too
Uh,
much always. It's such
yeah,
a default.
I can't do the creepy puppets anymore. I'm so tired of them. I just skimmed the story because I was just like, I don't want to deal with creepy puppets. They don't do it for me anymore. They're too the same. Like you were like you were saying, like you said, there's some differences between this and like other creepy puppet stories. It doesn't go for all the easy creepy puppet stuff. But I feel like if you've seen one creepy puppet story, you've seen every creepy puppet story.
I
Like this
think
just reminded me of that other TV show we watch, and it reminded me of
so
like
weird.
funny episodes of. Yeah, yeah, that
Yes.
episode was so weird.
Yeah, it made me think of that too. And like to your point, like the Goosebumps mascot is their creepy puppet. He's got like 4 books and then he's the host of an entire other series.
Yeah. Why? Don't do it. Creepy puppets. That's too much.
Yeah. It's old hat. Let's move on from creepy puppets.
Done with you, creepy puppets. You're not fun anymore, and I'm not going to expose my child to creepy puppets.
As much as possible, yeah. So you skimmed this. I wanted to skim this one, but I was in a cadaver lab, so it had more of my focus than I think it would have otherwise had.
I'll tell you, the problem was I was reading this book at the same time, like, my kid was trying to. I don't remember what she was doing, but every time I, like, sat down and, like, kept reading, she would come get my attention.
Hmm.
And then I was just like, I'm never gonna finish this puppet story, and I just moved past it.
So the next story was called Monster Party. Um,
Halloween Party.
Halloween Party? Oh, sorry. Halloween Party. It is
Corrected you.
standard fare, I would say. I enjoyed it. It's a middle of the pack story, but it's middle of the pack in a good grouping of stories. You know what I mean? I think in another
Sure.
book it would have really stood out, but it's Halloween, and these two kids go out trick or treating, and they're told not to separate. But of course, the older brother ditches his younger brother for a little bit because he wants to hit some houses that give out good candy, and his younger brother won't be able to keep up. And so they agree to meet up at 8 o'clock on this one street corner, and he's a little bit late, but he sees a kid who's dressed as a ghost. So he assumes it's his brother, and he follows him to this house because they're supposed to be going to a party. And he goes into the house, and it turns out it's an actual party for actual monsters. It is not a Halloween party, and he is now a human trapped in a house full of monsters, and he needs to escape because they are rapidly figuring out that he is a human.
Bad scene.
Yeah,
Bad scene for this kid.
never a good look to be an actual human at a monster party.
Yeah, and that's something you see pretty frequently, I think, throughout, especially like kids horror. I
Mm-hmm.
feel like even in adult horror. I'm trying to think of where I've seen it recently. I know that in the What We Do in the Shadows.
Of what am I thinking of? There's one. It's kind of like What We Do in the Shadows, but it's all actual like movie monsters.
I don't know what you're referring to.
It always pops up on my Amazon recommended videos, and right now I cannot, for the life of me, remember what it's called.
Hmm.
But while we talk, I'll scroll through my recommended and see if it
Oh,
pushes it
okay.
at me.
Yeah, this wasn't one of my favorite ones. I think you're right. It's middle of the pack.
Yeah, and it's a solid enough.
This was the contest winner.
Yes, this was the contest winner. So this was also probably like a kid who wrote this. So, I'm not going to
Well,
get
good for
too
no. You
down
can't.
on it.
For a kid, I'd say it's clever.
Yes. So I liked
Oh,
this one.
yeah. Hold on.
What
There's a about the author.
what I really liked was the next one. Um it was called
Babysitter.
The Babysitter. The Babysitter, I think, might have been my favorite story from this set. That I hadn't that didn't live rent free in my mind the entire time.
Definitely in my top three. It might be my favorite. It's definitely in my top three of the book stories in this collection.
It
Um,
was just good. Um,
yeah,
s- so she's the babysitter for these two twins in a creepy old Victorian house, and they're like 6 years old, and she always feels creepy in the house, like there's something watching her. And but the twins teach her this weird dance that their grandmother taught her. And if you do it down the hallway to their bedroom at night, you'll be fine. But the kids do say there is definitely something in the house. They refer to them as them. And so one night, it's Halloween, and she's babysitting the kids. And she puts them down and does the dance and takes them, to bed and proceeds to have like a horror movie marathon. But then begins to believe there's someone in the house, and then finds that there is someone in the house, and it goes through like that normal chase to get to the kids before they do. But the intruder does not know the dance down the hallway, so she gets to the bedroom and already done the dance, and as she closes the door, she hears like the horrific screams of the person behind her getting eaten by whatever is in the house.
Yeah.
And it's written really well. It name drops a lot of fun horror to kind of like get you on the same page as her as someone who likes horror. I don't know. I just
This could be this could be a movie. Could be
yes.
the or at least it could this could be the basis of like the opening of a movie and then it tells a bigger story. I think this one has the most potential of any story in this collection to be something more than a short story. Would I would say that story is ripe to be adapted into something bigger.
The movie, by the way, that I was referencing earlier was called The Monster Project.
I'm not familiar with it.
It is a like found footage documentary type of thing where they're interviewing three subjects who claim to be real life monsters: a demon, a vampire, and a skinwalker, I think. Um,
Okay.
but just to go back to that, concept that we talked about before. But yeah, no, I really just liked this. It had very like Hill House vibes to a degree.
Hmm.
Like I could picture this being the next like haunting of season.
I
Uh,
would watch. I would watch a much larger story based on this short story.
yes,
Uh,
absolutely.
this author is Jane Yolen, who is 83 years old, still going. She published her 400th book last year.
Wow. Yeah, I she's another one where I was like I need to look up more from her, and then I saw how much there was and I was like I'm going to have to sift through that.
Yeah, there's a lot here.
Yeah, there
She's
is.
from Massachusetts, so like where I live. That's neat.
So
Yeah, I
the
want to look. I want to look up way more of her work because I think there's going to be again, looking up for future episodes of our own show. I feel like there's going to be a lot for us to dive into.
we should just do a future episode where we dive into authors that we like have gotten snippets of and we just want more from.
Oh sure.
Almost
Well,
do like a deep dive into some of these people. So that is the babysitter, and then the final episode is called Death's Door, which I enjoyed. It's kind of like Escape Room, but for kids.
yeah, yeah, I like this one. It felt, you know what it reminded me of? It reminded me of Final Destination. If you were gonna make a Final Destination for kids where death is literally a character, that's what this felt like. I
Yeah,
don't know that you should make Final
found it.
Destination for kids, but that's what I felt like reading that story.
Yeah, I definitely got Final Destination vibes off of it. I think Final Destination meets Escape Room is the best way to sum this up. Um, it's a bunch of kids who are honestly they're really crappy kids, and they like to torment their substitute bus drivers. And they've destroyed every bus driver that's ever subbed for them. And in this one, Death decides to drive the bus. Um,
I was not rooting for these kids to make it out.
I was not. And so basically, they eventually realize that Death is going to basically like drive them to their death, and they need to get out of the bus before they are murdered. And even when they do at the end, Death says like, "All right, cool, you escaped the first trap. Get ready for the next one," which is where I feel like it's got like the escape room vibes, where just because you get off the speeding bus before the train hit it doesn't mean you're done. Now you're just in a plane. Um, so yeah, no, it was good. It wasn't a bad ending to the book. I kind of wish they had ended on a little bigger of a bang. I think if they had flipped this and the babysitter and ended on the babysitter, it would have been a perfect ending.
Yeah, that's
Uh,
that's, that's true. I agree with that.
because like again, I wasn't rooting for these kids. I was rooting for the girl and the babysitter. So to end on her cool, creepy victory, um, I think would have been like just ending on a high note. But
Yeah.
I also like that at the end of this book, they've gotten about the authors section, so you can learn about all the people who wrote all of the stories and maybe find some of their other stuff.
Very last page is one of my favorite things from books of this era, which was the order form. If you want to order more books, I don't know why I get such a kick out of those things.
I'm always just sad because, like, growing up, I was like, one day I'll have money, and now these aren't things.
Yeah, I don't think I ever ordered books
Never.
from a back of the book order form because I never would have wanted to rip a page out of a book.
Well, it was like the back of comics back in the day where you could get like X-ray specs and stuff.
Oh yeah, send away for them.
Yeah, I was never gonna tear a page out of a comic, nor did I have money. But
So overall, this
overall, I give
book,
this an A plus.
yeah, this is one of my favorite reads of what we've done for this series. I think it is uh definitely a couple of weak spots, but when it's strong, it's really strong. It definitely punches above its weight for
Yes,
a children's horror book.
this is so much better than My Teacher is an Alien. And
Uh,
yet, even on the cover, it's like from the author of My Teacher is an Alien, and I'm like, that should be saying from Bruce Campbell's Book of series, because now I bought the Book of Monsters, and I cannot wait for us to do that.
hmm.
Like I cannot wait for us to jump into more Coville Book of compilations. Because there's a second Book of Nightmares. I think there's at least two Book of Monsters. There are a lot of these.
So this book, let's try and not think of this. Let's take off our nostalgia glasses for a moment, if we
Hmm.
can. I know that's hard. This book, it's aimed at readers ages 9 to 12, grade level 4 to 6. Um, if not nostalgia, would you recommend it to a young reader?
Oh yeah, I mean every book that lived rent free in my mind held up.
Mhm.
I thought again, I think a lot of these are good intro stories, and that's a really good age. I mean, how old are you in fifth grade? Um,
I was 10.
10? So yeah, I think this is like the perfect age because you're not gonna like lose too much sleep over it, but it is gonna spark a lot of imagination.
Yeah,
And
I agree. I think this one really holds up. I am saddened to see that it's not more readily available.
yes, I was really bummed. I and some authors do this, so I don't know why I expect it of everyone, but like if you've got this old beloved classic that I'm pretty sure this won awards, um, and it's just out of print. Like some authors just like put these up on their websites so you can read them.
I wonder if it's an issue with the different
The different
authors,
authors, it could be.
or if that makes it more difficult to reprint.
That's probably what it is. It's just frustrating, and you can just read some of these stories. Like I've just Googled Joe R. Lansdale's short story for the last episode we did it on, and it just came up for free on Google. So some of these might just be here. Also, the first book, Book of Monsters, has another story by Joe R. Lansdale. So want to get into that. But, there are 12 of these books in total. And I would definitely at least recommend the Nightmare series to kids who are kind of getting into horror because it's got such a wide breadth of styles of horror that you can really kind of figure out at least the genre that you like.
Hmm.
Like the good thing about these short story compilations was you got to be like, I really liked that. I want more of that, and then try and you know what I mean? There's
Yeah,
just
it lets you get a taste of what you're going to be interested in.
yes, and then maybe follow up on that author or follow up on like I mean again, we have Google now, so you can just be like if you liked this, you'll probably like these five things.
This one we did find on the Internet Archive at archive.org.
We did.
Here, I'm gonna return it right now.
You only get it for an hour, which when you're
You can get
running,
an hour for.
yeah. I had to renew it like because I didn't have the physical copy until I got home from work that day, so I read like the last 4 or 5 stories in the book, but
You
I
can
was
you
running a cadaver lab, but because I kept getting busy with that, I had to just keep refreshing the book.
oh you can borrow for up to 14 days.
No, it would only let me do it for an hour at a time.
Oh no, there's a
There's a
mine. There's a drop down.
Oh, well, I did not see that. I was just
Uh,
doing an hour at a time like a fool.
which I mean, how many? I mean, if you just sit down and read this, it's not more than an hour and a half. Like if you have like time to sit down and just read this straight through, you can get it done in an hour and a half,
Oh
probably.
yeah, easy.
It's all. It's not even 200 pages. This is a short book. This is not a full afternoon's read. It's hard for us between jobs and dadding, which you might remain true for plenty of our listeners. Um, but I guess if you want to get a kid to read it, if you want to get a 10 or 12-year-old to read it, are they going to go to archive.org and read it through that way? I don't know
I think
what
this
the
could be
kids
a
are doing.
cool thing where you do like like every like evening you do like just one short story. Like pull
Mhm.
it out off of archive for an hour and do a different story every night. You know what I mean? Like that's the type of thing I think you could do.
It'll be good. I'm looking forward to when I can read my daughter more complex stories.
Yes.
So it'll be good for that.
Yeah, I that's the thing. I did not feel bad buying these because I'm excited to have them in my collection for when my son does need them.
Because there will come a day.
There will come a day. So honestly, I might even like throw this to my niece because she's starting to get into horror. And I
Yeah.
might
How
just
old is she?
she's like 12 or 13 at this point, but she's gotten into like some of the Japanese horror and stuff, Korean horror.
Oh my.
Yeah. Well, she's really into like, she's one of the kids these days. She's into like K-pop and stuff, and that just
Okay.
leads to, you know, K-dramas, and then like some of them are like spooky. There's a lot of like spooky romance comedy Korean TV shows. I watched a bunch of them while right after my kid was born, and I was just up at like 3 in the morning doing nothing. Um, so like, there's a lot of like ghost stuff that ends up in a lot of those weird daytime drama, nighttime like weird stuff, and so she's been watching a lot of them, which is a bonding point with her. And so she's watched The Ring and stuff. The Ring was a little much for her, but I think something like this could still be a really good, like, all right, if The Ring is still a little too much, check out something like this.
Fair. Check out the Fat Man.
Oh man, check out The Fat Man, and everyone let me know about The Fat Man.
Yeah, we want to hear everybody's opinion on the Fat Man. So that's what we'll leave you with this week.
Yes.
Everyone, find a copy of this book. Look online. See if you can find the Fat Man. Give it a read. Tell us what you think. Also, read The Babysitter. It was incredible.
If you're gonna Google it, I think it comes up as Bumper Crop, which is like the compilation of short stories that it's free in online. So if you're looking for this and Bumper Crop comes up, you've found it, and you can read it free online with that. Is my recommendation.
All
Honestly,
right.
we could always post a link to it, but
It's true. You could gather up some links.
if we want to be insane, we could just show them where to go. But yeah, if you Google Bumper Crop by Joe R. Lansdale, it just comes up free. It's like the fifth hit on Google, and you can just read it.
There you go.
But check it out. Let us know what you think. And
Need more short stories.
I don't think we have any digressions really in this episode. I could be wrong. But if we don't see you next week, we will be back in 2 weeks with a new spooky episode.
Yeah, so find us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. We are at RTSpiritspod. We're looking forward to hearing from you.
Thank you for joining us.
Night.
Night.